In 1961, a U.S. president pointed to the sky and made a promise to land a man on the moon before the decade was out. What followed was a race against time, against gravity, and against the impossible. This is the story of how ordinary humans became lunar pioneers, and how one bold dream changed history forever. This is the Apollo program, and it all started with a single step: a bold promise. The story of the Apollo program begins not in space, but in a time of deep political rivalry here on Earth. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union had escalated into a race for technological supremacy. When the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957, the first artificial satellite, and then followed up with the first human in space, Yuri Gagarin, in 1961, America felt it had fallen behind. In response, President John F. Kennedy made a dramatic declaration. On May 25, 1961, he stood before Congress and delivered a challenge that would redefine the next decade of space exploration. "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth." This bold promise became the driving force behind NASA's Apollo program. But make no mistake, this wasn't just about science, it was a geopolitical statement. Winning the space race meant proving the superiority of American technology, leadership, and ambition. NASA, just 3 years old at the time, was given the task of making that dream real. Overnight, the space program became a national priority. Budgets ballooned, engineers were hired by the thousands, and space became a matter of pride, progress, and power. This was a mission fueled by urgency, and failure wasn't an option. Engineering the impossible. Turning Kennedy's vision into reality meant creating technologies the world had never seen. NASA had to learn how to get humans not only into space but all the way to the moon, and safely back again. To get there, they built a 3-part spacecraft: the command module, where the crew lived and controlled the mission; the service module, which carried oxygen, fuel, and power; and the lunar module, designed to detach and land 2 astronauts on the moon's surface. To launch this complex machine, NASA developed the Saturn V, the most powerful rocket ever built. Standing 363 feet tall, it produced over 7.5 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. It was, and still is, a marvel of engineering. Before attempting a moon landing, NASA had to test everything. The Mercury and Gemini programs laid the groundwork. Gemini taught astronauts how to dock spacecraft in orbit, conduct spacewalks, and survive longer missions. These were essential for what Apollo would need to succeed. But even with these achievements, tragedy would strike. In January 1967, during a pre-launch test for Apollo 1, a fire broke out inside the command module. The pure oxygen environment turned deadly in seconds, and all 3 astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, were killed. The nation mourned. NASA paused. The spacecraft was redesigned for safety, and every system was re-examined. The tragedy became a turning point, an unforgettable reminder of the risks ahead. Despite the heartbreak, the program pressed forward with a deeper commitment to getting it right. The path to the moon was steep, but Apollo was just getting started. Stepping stones to the moon. With new safety measures in place, NASA resumed flight tests. Apollo 7 launched in October 1968. It was the first crewed Apollo mission and successfully demonstrated the redesigned command module in Earth orbit. Then came Apollo 8, a mission that made history. In December 1968, it became the first crewed spacecraft to leave Earth's orbit, travel to the moon, and circle it. The mission gave the world one of the most iconic images ever taken: Earthrise, a photo of our planet rising above the lunar horizon. It reminded everyone how small and precious Earth truly is. Next, Apollo 9 tested the lunar module in Earth orbit, while Apollo 10 acted as a full dress rehearsal for the moon landing. The crew came within just 8.4 miles of the lunar surface, but did not land. These missions proved that NASA was ready. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 launched from Kennedy Space Center. On board were astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. 4 days later, the world held its breath. The lunar module, Eagle, separated from the command module and descended toward the surface. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. And then came the moment watched by over 600 million people around the globe, that, as one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind, humans had walked on the moon. They stayed just under a day, collecting samples and taking photos. A plaque left behind reads, "We came in peace for all mankind." The goal Kennedy had set was achieved, but Apollo wasn't finished yet. Triumph, crisis, and innovation. After Apollo 11, NASA continued its lunar missions, each one built on the last, expanding human knowledge of the moon and proving what space exploration could accomplish. Apollo 12 landed in November 1969 with pinpoint accuracy near the Surveyor 3 probe, which had landed 2 years earlier. But not every mission went according to plan. Apollo 13, launched in April 1970, suffered a catastrophic failure. An oxygen tank exploded en route to the moon, crippling the spacecraft. "Houston, we've had a problem." The mission quickly shifted from exploration to survival. Thanks to quick thinking, precise calculations, and sheer determination, the crew returned home safely. Though Apollo 13 never reached the moon, it became one of NASA's greatest victories, proof of what could be accomplished under extreme pressure. The next 3 missions, Apollo 14, 15, and 16, saw astronauts using advanced tools, deploying scientific experiments, and even driving a lunar rover across the surface. Finally, in December 1972, Apollo 17 brought the program to a close. Astronauts Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt spent over 3 days on the moon. Cernan was the last human to leave the lunar surface, saying, "We leave as we came, and, God willing, as we shall return, with peace and hope for all mankind." In total, 12 men walked on the moon. They brought back over 800 pounds of lunar rock and soil. The Apollo missions transformed our understanding of the moon and our place in the universe. Apollo's legacy. Though Apollo ended in 1972, its impact has never faded. The program showed that humans could leave Earth, live in space, and return safely. It spurred innovations in materials, computing, telecommunications, and engineering that we use every day, from GPS to MRI machines to laptop computers. More importantly, Apollo inspired a generation to pursue science, engineering, and discovery. It reshaped how we see Earth, not as a vast planet, but as a fragile blue marble floating in darkness. For NASA, Apollo laid the foundation for future missions, like the Space Shuttle, the International Space Station, and the upcoming Artemis missions, which aim to return humans to the moon and eventually take us to Mars. But perhaps the greatest legacy of Apollo is what it tells us about ourselves, that with vision, unity, and effort, we can solve impossible challenges. That exploration is not just about reaching new places, but about understanding who we are and where we come from. The astronauts of Apollo left footprints on the moon, but the program left something greater, a symbol of what humanity can achieve when we dare to dream big. The story of Apollo isn't just a story of space, it's a story of courage, tragedy, resilience, and hope. And it reminds us, the sky is not the limit.